Some of those words have been taken back by certain Indian communities. I've certainly been to Indian communities where they call each other chief, or the younger generations will call each other savages, and that's community by community.
Oh,
Yo, what up? My name is Marcus Winchester, and we asked ChatGPT what are the top 10 things that non Native Americans want to know about Native American terminology. Make sure you watch all the way to the end to see what the answer is to the number one question. Number 10. What's the most respectful term to use? Native American, Indigenous, or something else? Well, that's kind of fucked up, ChatGPT. And the reason why is because in Arizona a few years back during one of their elections, they took an exit poll, and what they ended up labeling the Native American voters as was something else. And that didn't go over very well on social media amongst the Native American communities. And it's fair to say we do not want to be known as something else. Back to the question, if you're in the United States, your best bet is Native American. And if you're in Canada, your best bet is First Nations. And if you're in either country and you're feeling fancy, say Indigenous. Question number 9. Why do some people still say Indian if it is outdated? So that's a really good question because depending on who you ask, Indian is not outdated at all. And I know a lot of people, a lot of my friends, and me personally, we actually use Indian a lot and say that over Native American or any other word other than our word for ourselves, obviously. And long story short, we basically took ownership of that word. That is our word now. Question number 8. Is there a difference between Indigenous and First Nations? That's a really good question. In the United States, you will most commonly hear Native American. But if you go to Canada, they actually have 3 Indigenous groups. So one of those Indigenous groups is First Nations, and that's like your equivalent of Native American. And then they also have the Métis people, and basically what they are is a hybrid culture of Native American and the old French fur trapper culture, combined, intermingled way back in the fur trapper days, and some of those communities still exist to this day. And in Canada, they also recognize the Inuit people up in the Arctic Circle. So all 3 of those are indigenous groups to Canada. Question number 7. Should I refer to someone by their tribal nation instead of a general term? Yes, please do. And the reason why that is important is because the source of our identity isn't so much in the term Native American or Indian. We get the strength in our identity from our tribe, where we come from, our community, our home, our family, the people that claim us. That's the foundation of who we are as Indian people. It comes down to who our tribe is. So if you know a specific tribe, please use that. And if you don't know what tribes are indigenous to your area, hop on Google. It's real easy to find, and that's what I recommend. That's a good question. Question number 6. Do different generations prefer different terms? So this is another really good question, and the answer to that is yes. And I can only speak from my experience here in the Midwest. And from my experience, believe it or not, the older the generations are, the more often they use Indian. And then the younger the generations go, you start to hear Native American or Indigenous more so. A story that I have to share about that, a personal story, is my grandma we saw. So So my grandma we saw didn't call fry bread, she called it Indian bread. And when my grandma would talk about our language, she wouldn't say Bode Wadmimwin, she wouldn't say Nishna Bamwin, she wouldn't say our language or the language. When she was referring to it, she would say talk Indian. And I remember specifically this one time I was dancing at a powwow and she was there, and she was sitting in the front of where the spectators sit, of the elder seating, and I made it a specific point to dance directly in front of her for that whole round of intertribals. Like, I didn't go anywhere else in the arena, I just danced in front of her. And later on that day, when I seen her, she comes up to me and she goes, "You do really good when you do your Indian dance." There you go. I'm Indian. If you think this is interesting, subscribe to watch more videos. Question number 5. Is Aboriginal still used, and is it appropriate? So that is a really good question. In the United States, you won't really hear Aboriginal applied to Native people, but in Canada, that used to historically be used for the Indigenous people there. And nowadays, it's not socially, culturally acceptable to use that term. And just from my experience, whenever I hear that word Aboriginal, it feels like it's loaded with connotations of inferiority. And so me personally, when I hear that word, I don't like it. And I can see why it's not commonly used in Canada anymore. Question number 4. What's the best way to ask someone what they prefer to be called? Ask with authenticity. Be genuine about it. And when you ask, don't lead with questions that will make the person give you an answer that you want to hear, that is comfortable for you. So if you ask somebody that, be genuine about it. Question number 3. Are there any words that are definitely offensive and should be avoided? The people who do have racial prejudices against Native Americans, the bigots, though the people who act like that are normally the people that live close to Native American communities, and I'm pretty sure that they hardly ever say redskin. Those types of people usually say things like prairie ninja, tree ninja, I've heard, desert ninja, different things like that. So if you're a parent of a child that lives close to a Native American community and they go to school with a lot of Native American kids, please make sure that they're not saying any of those things. Savage, redskin, Tonto, chief, all of those were used historically to talk down to Indians, right? And if they ever were used as nicknames, it was in very poor taste. And that's the fact of it. Some of those words have been taken back by certain Indian communities. I've certainly been to Indian communities where they call each other chief, or the younger generations will call each other savages, and that's community by community. And depending on who you ask, some people will say that they don't mind being called those things, but I've spoken to enough elders to know that historically and to this day, if somebody is throwing words like that around, they're trying to be funny. It's a tasteless joke, and or it just is outright bigotry. So that's my stance on those terms. You'll find plenty of other Indians that'll tell you they don't care about those terms, but that's what I think. Question number 2. Are these terms the same in the US and Canada? So So that's a really, really good question. And the reason why that is because in the United States, the racial divide is seen as black and white. But in Canada, the racial divide is seen as red and white. And so, with that stated, and me not being First Nations Canadian, I can't speak on what they've experienced there because of that heightened racial tension that they experienced. But that's a very, very good question. Question number 1. Do these labels affect how Native American people are treated or perceived? That all depends on who you ask, and my perspective on it is, as long as we allow non-Native Americans to say things like savage, redskin, chief, tonto, we're continuing to allow non-Native Americans to not see us as real people. We continue to allow them to see us as gimmicks. We're continuing to allow them to define us rather than us define ourselves. And so I don't agree with those terms, and that's why, because of the ideology that they project and uphold and where it places Native Americans on the spectrum of social-cultural issues to listen to and to take serious. And that's my answer.
Oh.